Hello, the Dr. Muhammad Experience here to introduce you to pathways to success among children of incarcerated parents. One of the hot topics that we are talking about at this conference and within this qualitative national study is stigma. A lot of times when we think about Black men and we think about Black children that are affected by parental incarceration, there are negative connotations. In fact, there are statistics that have identified, without evidence that is, that children that have incarcerated parents have a greater likelihood of spending time in prison. And so we are projecting negatively upon the lives of those individuals that are considered the collateral consequences of incarceration, which we know is not fair. Those individuals who are the offspring of those that are incarcerated have done nothing. And oftentimes there are individuals that are incarcerated that don't belong there. So we punish the children, we punish the parents, and what sort of methodology does that give to individuals to learn how to navigate life? It doesn't necessarily give anything, it only allows individuals to stigmatize. Today, we have a phenomenal interviewee that has succeeded despite the odds of poverty in the community, trauma in the upbringing, and numerous other situations that children experience growing up in what we call life. So today I want to have a dialogue and a conversation about that in and of itself. If you could just introduce yourself, we'll get into the questioning following.
Again, my name is Quamiir. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm 26 years old. Just had a birthday, May 3rd,
Happy belated.
2020. And thank you. And I'm, a child of incarcerated parents too. My mom was in and out of prison or jail, and my dad is currently serving a life sentence.
So when you think about that statistic, the negative statistic that they say you have a greater likelihood of spending time in prison because you have a parent in prison, what are your thoughts on that?
I feel like it's a slap in the face, especially due to, all the things that I was able to overcome now and looking back. But I can't lie, it is challenging. It's definitely something that, is not ideal. I would much rather prefer having my dad and my mom consistently in my life. I did have my mom, up to a certain point, but again, I lost her not only to prison, but she was also addicted to drugs. So it was always, this back and forth thing, like her in my life and then out of my life at points, where I feel like I really needed her. But, just with those things in mind, especially as a young kid, you always feel this sense of embarrassment when you had to speak about, your family and share those, things that are, dear to your heart. Most kids I know growing up at least had one parent, and you can tell just that love and affection, growing up really, played a huge part in who they are and how they treat others. So I think I had to experience life and, in a unique way, but I was still able to learn a lot of those same values that my family would have passed on to me, had they, consistently been there. And of course, I believe that was just the blessings of Allah. I don't think, nothing happens by accident. However, when I did build that relationship with my dad, I think that was the turning point in my story, where I was first struggling. And just to have my dad remind me that, everything that I was doing, he wasn't, a fan of, and he actually wanted me to become, better than what he was, currently experiencing, being a byproduct of, the things he had to grow up without his dad due to his dad being murdered, at such a young age. And he just understood, later on, dang, that was something, that affected me and impacted my life. So I guess, again, looking back and saying to myself, the stigma, it can be true because I did still fall, within some of those statistics of still going to a juvenile placement, and still having to figure out life on my own. But I would never say that that defined me, right? My story did not start when I was at placement. My story began from the day I was born. My community had, so many different traumatic, experiences growing up. I remember walking outside one day, or about to go outside and, just play basketball on my court, and a guy was running down the street and got shot right in front of my house. So, you know, who's to say, like, forget placement? Like, I could have been dead, a long time ago. So, like, I wouldn't blame that on my parents, though, right? Like, you can't control all of these outside factors. Like, these are just things that I had to grow up, and face due to the environment I grew up in, the community I grew up in. Um, and, I would hope and pray that if my parents were there consistently, they wouldn't have, allowed me to grow up in, such a traumatic uh, community, or like in that type of environment. But who's to say, like, that would have been the case? Schools did not show any favoritism towards, you know, towards me, or, like, I guess, like, they didn't try to, uh, what's the word, like, cater to the needs that I was, in need of at the time. Like, of course, if being as though now I'm a teacher, like, I understand, the impact that you have as a teacher. Like, if you find out that a kid doesn't have his father or her father in their life, you can automatically, like, start to, you know, put together, like, ways to serve them, and you understand them differently. Like, that kid is not acting out because they are bad kids. They're acting out because they're lacking a lot of attention and love and affection at home, and they are seeking that. And I think that's really, what the quote unquote, I think, stigma should be. I think we should reverse the fact that we think it will, somehow equate to kids being bad kids, and growing up as being bad people. I just think we forget that those kids are growing up and still need all of those necessary things, like love, affection, and attention. And that's why, they keep craving it at a higher level once they get older. And those things, look different just when you become an adult. Because nobody's looking at you like you're a little kid anymore. Like, oh, he just need a little love. He just need a little attention. And you know what I mean? Like, being as though you had to miss out on that so much. I just think as a human being, it's not how can I say, it's not ideal. Like, you deserve that. Like, every human being deserves that. So yeah, that stigma. It doesn't even really make that much sense when you really think about it. Like, because when I did get the love and affection and attention that I needed by going to placement and, building successful and meaningful relationships with adults that were positive role models, as anybody can attest to now, like, I was able to figure life out just like anybody else. So it's like one of those things that, again, it feels like a slap in the face, but I understand it because you go through, like, a unique path in life that that suggests that, you know what I mean, without certain barriers, or without, certain experiences, then um, you may not have the success that other people, like your peers, may have, as fast as they have it, right? Like, you can end up getting it, but it just might take a little longer. So yeah,
Very,
that's
very
my
interesting. Yeah,
perspective.
very interesting. Thank you. One of the things that we do know is that everyone has a unique experience. And I think a bit of what you were talking about, leads to that and is evident of that. Being that you are a young Black man, do you feel that the experience is different in brown skin, knowing the things that are just happening now in the world. And time changes. We are looking at the news currently and seeing what's going on in New York City. We are beginning to see a lot of videos that are coming out of Pennsylvania as well, connected to Black individuals, women and men, but also young boys and law enforcement officers. And we do understand that there is a disproportionate number of minorities that are incarcerated, which automatically means that minority families are also impacted. What was your experience like as a Black male coming up in this experience of not having a parent? What are some of the things that you had to endure and see?
I think the biggest like thing that I had to endure in my life was just advocating for myself and learning that at a really young age. I don't think I would have had to do that as much if I had both of my parents involved. Uh, just from the standpoint, like, you know, my parents would have been a whole lot younger than my grandparents, right? Shout out to all of my grandparents that stepped in and played an amazing role in my life. But it just, wasn't enough. Like I needed some of that youth to still be there, because uh, things were constantly changing. Like things were not the same as, when my grandmother was younger and the way that my grandmother understood life. So I could come home and try to explain that to her, and she, just saw it from her perspective. And it's not to say that that was wrong or anything like that. I just think it was rooted in, you know, um, older generations' experiences and not, catching up with the times of the new generation. So I say that to say my my ability to advocate or learn to advocate for myself as I started to, get older was like that main thing that I had to learn. And I'm trying to think more specifically about the question. Can you repeat the question one more time? Because I know I was going somewhere with it.
Looking specifically at like the experience of being a young Black male, were there additional hardships? Were there additional things that you've seen? Just wanting to see things from your eyes, because we all have different eyes and different experiences, but we know that in all of the research, they talk about Black males, specifically young Black males, being at an increased risk
Right.
of leading into the criminal justice system. And I think it would be beneficial for viewers to understand the things that you have to experience first before you even get to this
Mhm.
concept. And you talked a little bit about it in terms of your mother and substance abuse and, going in and out of the system and, wanting to have more of that youthfulness in individuals and being raised by your grandmother. Some of the things that you didn't share a lot about, possibly that could fit here is, what you saw on the streets in Philly, growing up, going to school, things you had to experience at a young age, any, traumatic situations that you carried, that your eyes had seen that also become, heavy, a load on you in such a small body. I think it's just important that people understand that you are a whole person. It's not just one experience, but there's a lot of stuff that we deal with as humans on this earth.
I always give I give credit to people in Philly that graduate from high school here, especially if they travel outside their community to go to school. Because I remember like two unique experiences growing up. When I was first applying to go to high school, I wanted to go to a school called Massabon, and I wanted to play basketball. Like that was my thing. Like I had a real love and passion to play ball my whole life. And I also remember not having like my family being able to come and experience like me play ball and see me and cheer for me. But I would go out and still try to, make that happen on my own. One time in particular, though, on my way to orientation for high school, I saw this guy like getting robbed, like at the bus stop. And right away, like I just crossed the street and was like, I can't go to this school, like because it's way too far out of my neighborhood, right? And even though it would have had, a great opportunity for me to, gain the exposure that I needed to play ball, I thought like, it was it was life or death at that moment, right? Like I could end up, dead coming home or trying to get to school every day. So, what I mean? Like that just shaped my whole my narrative now. Like I was like, well, I care more about my life and I care more, that my grandmother don't have to, cry and weep because I'm not here anymore, rather than trying to go to a school, just to play, a game that I quote unquote love. And then it was another experience, just being at a high school where I first got arrested. Um, and I just remember, like going there and thinking like, yo, this is going to be the school where um, I get the opportunity to, just engage in like real learning, real scholarship, and all of these things. But just come to find out, like, teachers, are used to students like just being in the hallways and being in the fire, uh, I think fire staircases where, what I mean, they skipping class and nobody's coming to like check on them, like, yo, come back to class. So, like that started to play a major role in how I thought about, adults around me. And I just was like, yo, what's the point? Like I'd rather stay out on the block and get money, rather than go sit in a classroom, waste my time and risk my life, because it's not like you're safer in school, right? Like everybody try to, convince you that it's safe to go to school. It's not always safe. And I don't think every, young person feels safe. Even when, like growing up, I had coaches and things like that who wanted to like mentor me in ways. Like I couldn't always trust them because they knew that I didn't have somebody to back me up and support me, right? Like I always felt vulnerable. Like, yo, if something was to happen to me, like who do I run and get? Like I gotta run and get myself, because there's nobody, really that's gonna come to my rescue the way that I feel like I would need it in a situation like that. So I think like that speaks to the point, sort of like,
Hmm.
of course, it's a lot deeper than that.
Right.
It's a lot more stories to that, but that's just what I felt comfortable sharing.
Thank you for sharing that. I think vulnerability is a big piece. I love the way that you used your rhetoric and used your language to describe that, in the sense that um, people will take advantage of you if you don't have those backups. And I think that alone is a strategy towards success. Grandma can be there and a mentor can be there, but you also need, like you mentioned, youthfulness and individuals that are constantly backing you, which that's in any endeavor in life. So definitely thank you for that. Those are things that can be implemented immediately. Again, I hope that your viewers are out there listening, taking notes, and don't feel shy about going back and replaying this video as much as you need, so that you can identify an individual or individuals that can back you, that can also help you to be resilient and successful. Thank you guys for tuning in.